Welcome to the Resilient Performance Podcast. This is Keep It Real number 23, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Keep It Real number 23. We're going to talk about how information is disseminated on social media and the internet, and Doug's going to just take this and roll with it. We'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, I don't like to reference things that I think don't deserve much attention, but the only way to, I think, like, draw awareness to certain problems is you have to reference them. So, like, recently, the kind of melodrama on media for physios and strength coaches was there's two videos that circulated with professional athletes, and I don't want to actually, like, name the athletes and the coaches that were involved because I don't know what the context was. So I'm not trying to do it to disparage the providers or the athletes. It's more to disparage the reaction to the videos. One, and people will know who I'm talking about when I reference it. One was an athlete who was doing something on a balance board, standing on a balance board and playing catch, doing something. And the other was another athlete, both NFL athletes. The second one was doing some kind of, like, push-ups with his feet on a Swiss ball and his hands on a band. And it's just like the amount of attention that those videos generated, I think, was disproportionate to their actual value, from an informational standpoint. So I think, we used to live in a world where information was scarce, and probably when we saw something that we think warranted awareness, it was an instinct to share that with everybody. I think that social media makes the incentives different, where now, attention is the main currency of our time. And I think that if you legitimately think something doesn't have a lot of value, I think nowadays you're probably better off not sharing it, even if you're trying to mock certain behaviors, condemn certain behaviors, because these algorithms on social media don't differentiate between good and bad content. And I think there are people who they do things, and I'm not saying that was the case with these athletes or their coaches, but I'm just speaking, in general. Like, there are people who do things solely for attention because they're rewarded for their attention. And if you're, like, some kind of a social media influencer and you've got 100,000 plus followers, like, that's oftentimes, like, that's how you make money, is by putting out content that might be, like, pretty provocative, and you're banking on the fact that people are going to emotionally overreact to that content and share it. And so, in a way, if you think that those videos aren't very good, you're probably only helping the person who created the video. You're making that person more profitable and making them more lucrative by sharing it, because the more views those videos get, the better it is for that person. Because, again, attention is the currency. It's not about whether the information is good or bad. And I think that a lot of times, like, perception becomes reality. So if you look at social media, it's created to get attention. So whether it's something in politics, it's part of the reason why, like, people are so divided now, is because anything you see politically is, if you lean left, everyone on the right is the worst possible caricature of the right. And if you lean right, everyone on the left is the worst possible caricature of the left. And, like, if you actually interact with real people, that's not the case. I think most people are pretty sane and pretty reasonable, regardless of their political leanings. But if you go on the internet, like, everyone, again, is the worst possible characterization of some ideology. And then so if that's all you see and that's the only information you share, after a while that perception will come to the reality, even though in real life that's not actually happening. I think after a while that, that abstraction of reality actually becomes the reality and drives reality, to the point that now, like, we're the alternative universe becomes kind of the real universe. And it's the same thing with training, right? Like, if only good, just good basic foundational exercises that were well executed got the same amount of attention as the guy doing the push-ups on the band with his feet on the ball, or the guy doing, juggling while on the balance board. The thing is, as strength coach and physios, we don't actually share the good things to the same degree that we share what we consider the bad things. And if we only share the bad things and get outraged about the bad things, and, just again, only get excited and disseminate information when it comes to things that we don't think are very good, after a while, when you look at the hashtag for strength and conditioning, physical therapy, all you're going to see are those kind of videos that you think are trash. So I think, we would be much better served to, instead of, just giving people attention for things that really don't represent either field very well. I think in physio and strength and conditioning, they're like any other field. I think for the most part, right? Like most people are just kind of average and harmless. Some are very good, some are excellent, and then some are harmful and not very good. But it's just like even with manual therapy, right? Like when you see videos now of manual therapy on social media, it's like the person that's doing the cervical manipulation on the 1 month old, and it's like, oh my god, this is manual therapy. It's like most people who identify as manual therapists or do manual therapy are not doing cervical manipulations on 4-week olds, right? But that's kind of like that becomes associated with manual therapy because again, it's the worst possible characterization of that model or that ideology. So I think that there are certain instances where we need to draw awareness to various things that probably aren't very good. But I think in 2021, lack of information and lack of awareness is barely the problem. And if we really want to drive our professions forward, I think we're better off by instead of resisting the urge to share things that are probably created to garner attention at the cost of everything else, and instead of sharing those attention garnering videos, just share an alternative, something that you do that you think is better without referencing the bad thing. Because the more we reference these things, again, I think any kind of attention, good or bad, is rewarded monetarily and by these algorithms. And I think it's very emotionally satisfying to be like, look at how much this sucks, and get and pander to our tribe and get that tribal reinforcement. And on a micro level, that's not necessarily a bad thing to seek that kind of approval. But on a macro level, there are unintended consequences to sharing things in the information age, because now that the perception of, that perception becomes the reality. And then it just becomes more and more extreme, where when we look at physio or strength and conditioning, for the most part, the things that are associated with our professions are those things that probably aren't very good and are done for attention, because people who identify as like moderate, that's all that the moderate people are sharing. Moderate people don't share moderate things anymore. They only share the things that they think are really bad. So, I mean, I can go on and on about this because I think it has consequences much more toxic and profound than even doing push-ups and standing on a balance ball. I think it has really important political ramifications that we haven't dealt with yet. But and what are your guys' thoughts on that? How do we make this better?
I mean, I think, like you kind of said, sharing what you think is good and sharing the things that are more positive, I think it just is going to create a better environment for social media. Like I've had chunks of my professional career where I've gotten off social media because it just pisses me off so much when I'm going online, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or whatever. So definitely is like, I think almost like an overarching kind of toxic environment that social media has started to just put out, so to speak. And I totally agree about, just don't necessarily comment on the things that you think are negative and kind of trolling for the sake of trolling, but just constantly putting out good information that you think is valuable. And one of the things that you said initially, Doug, about like the context of these videos, like I think that context of those videos is so important, because you can take anything in isolation and put it on social media, and you're not really getting the full picture of why this person chose to do this certain thing. And one of the things that we've talked about with our buddy Cody before, for like these specific cases, like professional athletes doing kind of like crazy things, if the reward is not that high and the risk is also not that high, I'm kind of fine with it to a certain degree. And if you have somebody that you're seeing 7 days a week for probably like 3 to 4 hours a day, like you're going to have a lot of filler crap that you're just throwing into somebody's program to keep them kind of interested and keeping them occupied and keeping challenging them that they think is kind of hard. Like as long as the person's not really at a huge injury risk, like it's not having 4 or 5 on your back and trying to do squats on a Bosu ball. Like, yeah, that's a lot more dangerous than doing some push-ups with your feet up and some bands. Like, yeah, you might fall and like hit your face, but you're not gonna break a leg, you're not gonna tear a labrum, you're not gonna do something more extreme. So like I kind of look at those parlor trick, circus trick type of exercises that people post with some of these professional athletes as that. I'm like, those are probably just a filler thing. Like I don't really think about them too much, because it's like, yeah, if I had somebody 7 days a week for 4 hours, I'm gonna have to find some time to just like make crap up. And yeah, you're probably not really getting them better at anything, but that could be just what the person wants sometimes. Like there's so much context that you just can't get from a single social media clip, especially like a 30-second Instagram video, that you just miss out on. So like we always try to share case studies and share like the actual things that we do with our clients in the clinic to be as transparent and give as much context as we possibly can behind everything that we do.
And all these videos with like professional athletes that we're referencing here, talking about like the different sort of like circus type tricks that they're doing. It's not like that's all they're doing. Like Trevor's saying, they're with these people. They have trainers. They have nutritionists, they have chefs, like they have everybody working to make them a better athlete or, optimize their performance or whatever you want to call it. And like if that was the only thing they were doing, then yeah, that'd be a huge problem. But like they're probably also being told by, their cousin's friend who's a trainer, like, oh, you should try this thing because it's going to make your hand-eye coordination better or whatever. And like Trevor said, like if it's not going to make them worse, it's not going to hurt them, then like sure, like we got plenty of time. You're a pro athlete, you want to have some fun and like fuck around a little bit, sure, like go for it. We're here to have fun anyway. So if you want to try something, and that'll happen too, even with someone who might not have those resources or have that 7 days a week training 4 hours type of situation. It might happen with us with patients where they come in and say like, I was told that I need to do this, stretch this certain muscle or whatever, and it's like, all right, like we've spoken about this before, if you do that and it makes you feel better, it's not going to hurt you, then I don't really care. And I'm probably going to try and use it to my advantage and be like, oh yeah, I think that's a good one, I think that's going to be great for you. Yeah, who cares? Like if it doesn't make them worse, it might make them better, and they want to spend a few extra minutes doing something that maybe we wouldn't have chose for them to do. Like it's all good. Let's keep it real. It's not the only thing that they're doing. It's if it makes them in their head feel like they're getting better, improving, or whatever it is, then I'm all for it. You want to say something about that, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a general rule, like we should never assume that it's kind of like you're innocent until proven guilty. I don't assume bad faith with anybody who posts anything on
Right.
these platforms. So, like, first of all, if I was a professional athlete and I was getting, like I got passive income because of my Instagram, even if these circus trick videos that we're seeing compromise like 5% of my training, of course I would put them on there because, like, the more people watch them, the more I get paid for doing nothing. And so even though with the like social media, there are these kind of like algorithms and these things going on behind the scenes that are designed to kind of manipulate people, they only work because people take the bait. So to some degree, it's like this philosophical free will discussion. Like, to what degree do any of us have free will? That's like a timeless debate. But the thing is, these things are so pervasive because people who have, we can argue about how much agency we have, but people who have some agency, we're sharing it. So even like the quote unquote good strength coaches, they talk about this stuff way more than they talk about what they would consider good training. So of course, like if that's the case, then people who create these videos and do these exercises have every incentive to keep doing them, because even people who think that they're no good are going to share them and give them the publicity, right? So like we all play a role in this. And a lot of times like this reality, when people say like, well, this is not my profession or this is not my world or whatever, like not my politician, it is, because by the way that we all interact on these platforms, like these platforms are to a degree giving us what we want. Like yes, they're nudging us and they're very, very biased, but we can decide to ignore this stuff. So I
You can mute, instead of resharing stuff, you can just mute them. You can make it so they don't show up in your feed. Like just do stuff like that instead of reposting something you don't like.
And that's a great point. I mean, it can be exhausting. It's like whack-a-mole. It's hard to stay on top of everything that you want to mute. But like we're in Danny Mattei's mastermind, and I was at the in-person event a couple weeks ago, and Kelly Starrett gave a talk there, and he was talking about kind of like social media etiquette, and he said like social media is a great tool, and there's a lot of people that I never would have even interacted with in real life had I not kind of met them, so to speak, on social media, and it's led to actually some like meaningful personal in-person relationships. But I think you can be very selfish and strategic about how you use it. And Kelly made the point that like anybody that he thinks is a bad actor and like interacting with him in bad faith and is just trying to use his platform to, because obviously like you can hijack somebody else's platform. If you're a troll and you have like no followers and you want some eyeballs on you, the easiest thing to do is just find somebody who's like already created a successful platform through like real hard work and attack that person. And it's so therapeutic to just like, if you don't like what someone's doing and you don't think they add value, block, mute, and make the platform work for you versus you kind of being this passive actor in the platform. And I think if you do those things, social media can be very powerful, and it can be a great source of information, but you have to have a little bit of a filter. And even if you see something that you think is bad, like the more you engage with it and share that, the more you're going to keep seeing those things on your feed. So it's kind of, I mean, like I said, on a micro level, it's like, yes, we condemn something, but condemning it now doesn't make it go away. It makes it come back tenfold, right? the more we condemn it, the more we keep seeing these things. It's just more incentive to create that kind of content. So yeah, I think we have to assume, innocent until proven guilty. But once someone does prove to be a bad actor, and again, I'm not saying that the people that these athletes or their coaches in the videos that we're talking about are bad actors. It's more just like the reaction to it. Like in a lot of cases, the reaction to a lot of these things is way worse than the thing itself. And we have control over how we react.
Yeah, and I think we also we just value like sharing what we actually do most of the time. Which we find is like that's something that makes us angry often. If we're on social media, we'll see people post things that we know they don't actually do, and it's just like come on, let's just keep it real and like do something, like show us what you actually do with people, because yeah, maybe it's not something sexy that's like gonna blow up the internet, but like that's not our goal with social media, and maybe like you said, if that is someone else's goal and it's going to help their life, like that they have their ability to do that. But we just appreciate authenticity, because eventually, like if you build up this following through like disingenuine content and things that you're not actually doing, you're not really, an expert on, let's say, like it's just going to come back in the end, and people are going to find out, and it's almost like an empty promise, so to speak. So instead, just like share what you actually do and start conversations about those things, and you can make yourself better just by sharing something you might do that, maybe somebody comments on it like, oh, I do that, but I add this little thing to it, or I do this as a different variation. And it's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. We'll find that a lot.
I think if you have a good filter, you can kind of find the people who you think are authentic on social media. I think those are obviously the people who we follow and who we have developed friendships with and developed, good just work and outside of work relationships with. The people who come to social media from a professional standpoint and still try to be authentic, whether just from what they actually do, but also just like who they kind of are as people. They're not trying to like put on a show. They're just trying to be real all the time. Like those are the people that I enjoy following on social media. It's the people who try to have a persona and try to be fake and try to be controversial and try to be like a talking head. That's just like, those are the people I just can't stand and I don't really have time for. So I think part of it's like, you need to, whatever you want your social media experience to be, like you kind of have to curate that for yourself. And I think like on the Resilient feed that all of us have, it's like, I think we've done a good job of curating like the positive social media experience that we want to have with people. So it's like, we see the people whose content is authentic and is real, and it's what they actually do when they're trying to share positive things, not just, the crazy one funky exercise you made for one person and then with no context behind it. Because I think like that's what a lot of those videos we've kind of been referring to are like, there's no way that they do that with that athlete all the time. There's no way that they do that with other athletes that they work with. It's just like this one kind of thing, which is fine. But then it becomes, like you said, the reaction to those things is so extreme that it just becomes this cesspool of like negativity that just is so unnecessary. So like just not even like following those things, like not even trying to interact with those people, like saves you a lot of heartache, especially because I think like I was saying before, I noticed how social media was like affecting my mood. I was like, I'm irritable right now. Just from being on Instagram for like 45 minutes. I'm like, that's not like, I don't want to be like that. So it's like, I got to get off of this stuff for a little bit. Like, I think almost trying to develop an awareness of like how you're actually like thinking and feeling when you're going through social media, like makes a big difference. I think social media and like, all that shit just becomes such a huge part of everyone's day-to-day life, sitting in line, going on your phone, checking Instagram. Like there's all these things that are constantly taking our attention that I don't think we realize like how it's affecting us. And I think that's kind of like part of your larger point, Doug, is it's like, but understanding like the secondary effects, not just like of looking at the social media post and thinking that's dumb, but then it's like just being pissed off and changing like your mood. And there's just other, like you said, there's other negative consequences from social media sometimes that I think we aren't always fully aware of.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming a race to the bottom, and it's not just the people that are creating the divisive content. It's like all of us spectators, like we play a role in it being a race to the bottom, because if we didn't acknowledge this stuff or pay attention to it, after a while, people would stop posting this divisive content because like they wouldn't be rewarded with the attention that they seek. So, and I think that if your goal, right, is just you want the attention, there's like two ways to do it. One of them is to be kind of like show what you do, but you show yourself doing ridiculous things, your athletes doing ridiculous things. And the other is to not show anything, but just be very critical of everything everybody does, right? And Kelly made that point where he's like, there's a lot of people that I know what they don't like, but they like I don't know actually know what they do because they're very outspoken about everything other people do. This is no good, that's no good. But it's like, all right, like what do you? Because if you show your program, even if you show clips of training athletes, like if you show a clip of you doing a circus trick with an athlete, at least like you're making a decision that this is how you want to be represented. But there's people who don't really share what they do at all. And if you do share a program or you do share clips of yourself training your athletes, then we kind of know what you stand for and also to a degree what you don't stand for. Because like if we put one of our programs online and we repeatedly put up programs, if certain things continue to not appear or show up, that means we probably don't think those things are that valuable, right? So it's kind of like we're not referencing something that we don't think is good directly, but by not including it in our programming, we're saying that we have a finite amount of time and resources, and we don't think this is important enough that it warrants a place in our program. So there's ways to even be critical without being hypercritical, without being like kind of, like just really rude about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean, like we've kind of said before, it's like just sharing the things that you actually do, whether it's through case studies, whether it's through different videos. Like I think K-Stars, he's always, I mean, he is, I would say, the OG of like the performance rehab, like, social media games, starting with Mobility WOD way back in like 2010 and all that. Like he's kind of he's been through social media since it was kind of sort of becoming a thing. But I think one of the things I've always loved about him is that he's just been authentic as hell the entire time. Like he's never tried to like sound a certain way or be somebody that he's not. It's like, this is what I actually do. And he's just sharing genuine information. And he's just so unbelievably like real and authentic in those videos that like, you feel like you know him just from like watching his Instagram videos. And it's like, then you see him in person. It's like, yeah, that's just, he is who he is. Which is why I think like, again, I just had so much respect for him for, the last 10 years or whatever it's been. So it's like, he shares the things he does with his athletes, how he actually programs or the interventions he actually gives to the real people he works with. It's not just fake.
And we might not even like pick some of those things to use in our programs, like you're saying, Doug. But that's still okay. Like we're not, we don't necessarily love every single piece of content that somebody might put out, but it doesn't mean it's useless, or it doesn't offend us. It doesn't offend us if they're actually sharing what they do. We appreciate that.
Yeah, and you try to look at people like in the totality of what they present. Like obviously you're not gonna. I mean, if everybody likes everything that we put out, like that's probably not good either. Because I'm sure there's stuff that we put out that like if you critically examine it, it's not that good. But even with Kelly, I mean, whether you agree with him or not, the stuff that he posts is what he does for himself. Like he's, I'm not like it's not proprietary information because he's posted about how he had a knee replacement, but like he was talking about at that mastermind event, like the stuff that he's doing to recover from that. And it's like, it's the stuff that he puts in his videos. He doesn't have like this secret thing that he does for himself or as athletes. And then like his social media persona with like all this different attention grabbing material, it's the same thing. So the more your kind of private stuff intersects with your public stuff, it's probably the more, that's kind of like the authenticity Venn diagram, right? Like when private and public intersect a lot, that intersection is transparency. And that's like, that's what we would hope for, is that there's an intersection between those things. But the way to really be transparent again is to show what you're doing. And then, if there are people like in good faith want to have a conversation about that, they can. But, like I said, there's a lot of people who don't mean to be divisive, but by virtue of the things that they share and just like the emotional way in which they react to things, they actually are driving that stuff. And I don't think it's deliberate, but it's like social media is a weapon like any other weapon that can physically hurt somebody. And there's ways to handle a weapon properly so that it's utilized in a responsible way. And like, I don't think that we've actually really figured out how to do that yet because it's so new. And I think that at some point we will, but there's a downside that has to be acknowledged because it has pretty far reaching consequences and well beyond standing on a balance board and doing push-ups on a band, like things that are way more consequential that if we as the people that aren't, because I say we, because I think collectively most people aren't trying to be divisive on social media, but the more you pay attention to those things, like, and take the bait, it's an ecosystem, and the more you reward the really like the toxic actors from hijacking the whole system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep it real.
Yeah, keep it real.
Always the message.
So just a quick reminder, our Return to Sport Acceleration Agility course just came out, and we are opening up we have a list that we started to let people join via our VIP list to learn more about our professional mentorship program that we are looking to launch this summer. So hop on our website, resilientperformance.com, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Resilient Performance Podcast. As a thank you for listening, please use promo code PODCAST for 10% off our professional development resources at resilientperformance.com. Also, make sure to sign up for our mailing list to receive exclusive content and promotions.